We were talking about it recently that one of the places we really want to try and make strides is how we can all, whatever agencies, whatever professionals, whatever people are coming in contact with stalking victims, how we can better ask questions that will provide their opportunity to first say what's really going on, but also to identify it as not okay, not normal, not acceptable. And a big part of that is, I mean, it's still true of me. I want to learn those questions. I want to find better ways to get victims to understand the information they have is okay to give. It's okay to talk about it. There's nothing too little. That's what they all downplay things. And how many times have I heard, oh, but it wasn't physical. But it doesn't make it any less abuse. And sometimes it makes it a great deal more. But I just hear that all the time. And so when I think about giving examples to victims, when I say things like mowing a stripe down the center of the lawn, it's because I try and think of really freaky examples, because I find that when I give them the total most off-the-wall example that I can, that puts them in a position to say the thing that I wouldn't have thought of, because we can never think of the crazy things stalkers are going to do. But at least if I've talked to them about somebody mowing a stripe down the center of their lawn in the middle of the night, then suddenly when they say, there's cherry Kool-Aid on my back porch every day, and I don't drink cherry Kool-Aid. He only drinks it, but he's not there, and I have no reason to think he was there. And suddenly that thing that they don't want to say to anybody, because who the heck wants to complain about cherry Kool-Aid being on their back porch? I mean, the way stalkers get to victims are because they do the thing that's going to make that person sound crazy when they try and go for help. What do you mean you need help because there's cherry Kool-Aid on your back porch, ma'am? I mean, you get, and I'm not downplaying police, or I'm not even acting out. We can all understand, we would be there too, thinking, if we didn't happen to know so much more about stalking, and even knowing much more about stalking, you have to almost be vigilant all the time, like a stalking victim has to be, to where the way you take in the information they give you comes always with a grain of salt, that you never give an answer back too quickly without thinking of it, because you just almost have to think, this is what they're saying. What are they not saying? What are they able to hear right now? There's just so much dynamic that goes on. But like when I've talked about the criminal justice system and the real additional ways that it can often re-victimize victims, those are all things. It's easy to sound like just constant complaints, because you could complain all day, every day about the criminal justice system. There is no doubt there will always be elements to complain about. When I point out things that I have to tell victims to get them to understand the realities, it's not to make them run the other way. It's so that they're not surprised every day by more bad news. It's so that I can keep them connected to the process by talking about, yes, this could be the outcome, but here's what we could do to circumvent that. Here's what we could do to predict that, or to prepare for that eventuality. Here's where we can, I'm not helping you if I pretend he's not getting out of jail. I'm helping you if I say, you know what, I know you don't want to hear it, but the likelihood is that he could be released pre-trial. So let's talk about safety planning as though he's going to be released, instead of saying, I'm so happy I can go to the grocery for the first time without being terrified, and then swinging so far the other direction that you're not protecting yourself. You'll hear officers talk about, it's just a piece of paper, it won't really protect you. All of us need to remember that the things that we give victims, information or otherwise, are tools. They're not promises, they're not absolutes, and they are absolutely and without a doubt should never be a promise of protection. I've learned a lot recently with a case where somebody that was on GPS actually cut their monitor. And obviously the victims that were being protected by that GPS are considered at extreme risk now, because we already know that's somebody that they'd go after, and now we don't know where this person is. Well, what I learned is it's next to impossible to provide 100% protection to anybody unless you have them locked in a cell with police on all sides. Otherwise, if they're not in constant monitored surveillance, there's anything that they expose themselves to, any of their normal behaviors, going to school, going to their job, picking up a pet, going to visit a family member, anything, there's no protection from it. You cannot provide 100% perfect protection at any time. And just constantly remembering that, I think, really, instead of that truth being, well, that's horrific, then let's give up. Let's remember that truth so that every other step is more realistic about what we can do, or what we should prevent for, or what we should prepare for, or an eventuality that should be considered, because we never should pretend we have control over elements that we don't. When I talk to victims about bad experiences with victims advocates or with the criminal justice system that they'd had previous to the interaction that I'm having with them, very often those complaints come because they weren't told the realities. They weren't informed about the difficulties of the process, or the risk that could occur with the fact that there's very few agencies or professionals involved in the process that have absolute control over elements that we don't. When I talk to victims about bad experiences with victims advocates or with the criminal justice system that they'd had previous to the interaction that I'm having with them, very often those complaints come because they weren't told the realities. They weren't informed about the difficulties of the process, or the risk that could occur with the fact that there's very few agencies or professionals involved in the process that have absolute control as to when that perpetrator of a crime is getting out, or might be released, or might be at risk. To be honest, in talking to corrections professionals, it's interesting to see the ways they can still be of risk to that victim even from jail. So, you know, I just think that it's very important to not see the things that can go wrong as anything more than hurdles to be addressed and moved beyond. But you have to take the victim with you on that path and have them understand all the elements for the risk to be something they can protect themselves from.